Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. You're walking through a forest. It's peaceful, quiet, the kind of walk where your mind wanders and you're not really paying attention to anything in particular. Then you hear it, a rustling in the trees above. You look up and see a chimpanzee, maybe 4 feet tall, weighing about 130 pounds, roughly the size of an average adult human. It's watching you. And then, for reasons only it understands, it decides to come down. It drops from the branch, lands a few feet away from you, and before you can process what's happening, it grabs your arm. Not hard, not aggressively, just a casual grip. And in that moment, you realize something terrifying. You cannot move your arm at all. This animal, smaller than you, lighter than you, has a grip strength that makes your entire body feel like a child's toy. You pull. Nothing happens. You try to twist away. It doesn't budge. The chimpanzee isn't even trying. It's just holding you, casually, the way you might hold a pencil. And you, a fully grown human, one of the most intelligent species on the planet, cannot break free. Now, if that chimpanzee decided to pull, to actually use its strength, it could rip your arm off. Not figuratively, literally. Chimpanzees have been documented tearing limbs from bodies, ripping faces apart, breaking bones like twigs, all with what appears to be minimal effort. And here's the part that should keep you up at night. A chimpanzee is roughly 5 to 7 times stronger than a human. Pound for pound, same size, same weight, but incomprehensibly stronger, which raises a question that scientists have been asking for over a century. Why? Why are humans so pathetically weak? We share 98.8% of our DNA with chimpanzees. We diverged from a common ancestor only 6 million years ago, which in evolutionary terms is the blink of an eye. And yet, somewhere along the line, we lost our strength. Dramatically, catastrophically. We became, by primate standards, fragile. This isn't normal. This isn't how evolution usually works. Traits that make you weaker, that make you more vulnerable, that reduce your ability to survive and defend yourself, those traits get selected out. They disappear. But we didn't just lose a little strength. We lost most of it. We went from being powerful, robust, physically dominant animals to soft, weak, slow creatures who can barely climb a tree without getting winded. And the strangest part? We thrived anyway. We became the most successful species on the planet. We conquered every environment. We built civilizations. We went to the moon, all while being physically weaker than our closest relatives. So what happened? What evolutionary trade-off made us give up the one thing that every other animal on Earth prioritizes above almost everything else? Strength, power, the ability to physically dominate your environment. Scientists have theories. Some make sense, some don't. But here's the uncomfortable truth. We still don't fully understand why humans are so weak. We can map the genetic changes. We can see the muscle fiber differences. We can measure the strength gap down to the pound. But the why, the actual evolutionary pressure that made losing our strength more advantageous than keeping it, that's still debated, still uncertain. Still one of those mysteries where you get a lot of educated guesses and very few definitive answers. If you're using this to fall asleep, perfect. That's exactly why I make these videos. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from, what time it is, and if you've ever actually seen a chimpanzee up close. I love reading these. Tokyo at dawn, São Paulo at midnight, someone in Norway during their lunch break, all of us wondering why we're so ridiculously weak compared to our evolutionary cousins. The scientific explanation sounds straightforward at first. Humans traded muscle mass for brain power. We became weaker because we became smarter. Big brains require massive amounts of energy. Something like 20% of your daily caloric intake goes to feeding your brain, even though your brain is only 2% of your body weight. That's expensive, evolutionarily speaking. So the theory goes our bodies had to make cuts elsewhere. Muscle is metabolically expensive, it burns calories even at rest. So we shed muscle mass, became weaker, and redirected that energy to our growing brains. Trade-off complete. Mystery solved. Except it's not that simple. Because other primates have big brains too. Relative to body size, chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, they all have brains that require significant energy. And yet they didn't lose their strength. They kept their muscle mass, they remained powerful. So the brain for brawn trade-off, while it sounds neat, doesn't fully explain why humans specifically became so weak. There's something else going on. And to understand it, we need to go back, way back, to the moment when our ancestors started walking upright. Roughly 6 to 7 million years ago, the last common ancestor of humans and chimpanzees lived in Africa. This ancestor was probably a tree-dwelling primate, strong, agile, capable of swinging through branches, climbing, fighting, defending territory. It had the muscle structure typical of apes, dense, powerful, efficient. Then something changed. Climate shift. The forests began to recede. Open savannas expanded. And some populations of this primate found themselves spending more time on the ground, walking. Not on all fours, not knuckle walking like chimps, but upright. Bipedalism. This is one of the most significant changes in human evolution. Walking on two legs freed up our hands, allowed us to carry tools, allowed us to see over tall grass, changed our entire skeletal structure. But it also changed our muscles dramatically. When you walk upright, you don't need the same muscle distribution that a quadruped or a tree climber needs. Your arms, which were used for pulling your body weight up through trees, for gripping branches, for swinging, those arms no longer do the heavy lifting. Literally, your legs take over. But human legs, even though they're stronger than human arms, are not built the same way primate arms are built. They're built for endurance, for walking long distances, for persistence, not for explosive power. So, our upper body strength, which had been honed over millions of years of climbing and swinging, started to atrophy. We didn't need it anymore, and evolution is ruthless about cutting things we don't need. But that still doesn't fully explain the strength gap. Because even our legs, even the muscles we use constantly, are weaker than chimpanzee muscles, pound for pound. A chimpanzee's legs are stronger than a human's legs. A chimpanzee's core is stronger. A chimpanzee's grip is stronger. Everything is stronger. So it's not just about losing upper body strength because we stopped climbing. It's something deeper, something at the cellular level. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because the difference between human and chimpanzee strength isn't just about muscle mass. It's about muscle fiber type. Your muscles are made up of fibers, and there are different types of fibers that do different things. Type I fibers, slow twitch fibers, are built for endurance. They resist fatigue. They're what marathon runners have in abundance. They contract slowly but can keep going for a long time. Type II fibers, fast twitch fibers, are built for power. They contract quickly and forcefully. They're what sprinters have, what weightlifters have, what animals that need explosive strength have. Humans have a mix of both fiber types, but compared to chimpanzees, we have way more type 1 fibers and way fewer type 2 fibers. Chimpanzees are the opposite. Their muscles are loaded with fast-twitch fibers, which means they can generate explosive, overwhelming force in an instant. Humans can't. We're built for endurance, for walking long distances, for persistence hunting, where we track an animal for hours until it collapses from exhaustion. Not for raw power, not for explosive bursts. So at some point in our evolutionary history, there was a genetic shift, a change in how our muscles developed, a change that favored endurance over strength. And here's where scientists start arguing, because nobody knows for sure why that shift happened. Some researchers think it's related to diet. Early humans, especially after we started eating more meat, had access to higher quality calories, which meant we didn't need as much muscle mass to extract energy from food. Chimpanzees, who eat mostly plants, need strong jaws, strong arms, strong everything to process tough vegetation. Humans, eating cooked meat, didn't need that. We could afford to be weaker because our food was easier to eat. Others think it's related to tool use. Once we started making tools, stone tools, weapons, fire, we didn't need to rely on brute strength to survive. We could kill animals from a distance. We could defend ourselves with spears instead of fists. Physical power became less important than intelligence and coordination. Still others think it's related to social structures. Humans are insanely cooperative. We work in groups. We share resources. We specialize. In a social species like that, being individually strong matters less than being part of a strong group. A chimpanzee needs to be powerful because it might have to fight one-on-one for resources, for mates, for dominance. A human doesn't. Humans gang up. Humans strategize. Humans use tools and teamwork to overpower threats. So, individual strength becomes less of a survival advantage. All of these theories have merit. All of them probably played a role, but none of them fully explains the sheer scale of the strength loss. Because we're not just a little weaker, we're 5 to 7 times weaker. That's not a minor trade-off, that's a fundamental redesign of what it means to be a primate. And that kind of dramatic change usually means there was a strong selection pressure. Something that made being weak actively advantageous, not just neutral, not just we can get away with it, but actually beneficial. And that's the part we still don't fully understand. Let's talk numbers, because when you actually measure the strength difference between humans and chimpanzees, it's almost unbelievable. In grip strength tests, an adult male chimpanzee can exert around 1,300 pounds of force. A strong adult male human can exert around 150 to 200 pounds. Chimpanzees, 1,300. Humans, 200. That's not 5 times stronger. That's 6 to 7 times stronger. In their grip alone, pull strength, the ability to pull your body weight up, to lift, to drag, chimpanzees can pull roughly 847 pounds with one hand. Humans struggle to do a single pull-up. We're talking about an animal that can casually lift and throw weights that would require multiple humans working together. Jumping ability. Chimpanzees can leap vertically several feet from a standstill. Humans, even trained athletes, can't match that power output. Bite force. A chimpanzee's bite can exert around 1,300 psi, enough to crush bone. Humans max out around 150 to 200 psi. We can barely bite through tough meat without tools or cooking. Speed. Chimpanzees, despite being built for climbing, not running, can sprint faster than most humans. Agility. Coordination. explosive power. Every single metric, chimpanzees dominate. And it's not just chimpanzees. Gorillas are even stronger. A silverback gorilla is estimated to be 10 to 20 times stronger than an adult human male. They can bend iron bars. They can throw objects weighing hundreds of pounds. One documented case involved a gorilla casually tossing a 400-pound tire like it was a frisbee. Humans can't even lift 400 pounds without serious training, let alone throw it. Orangutans, despite being slower, more deliberate, have grip strength and arm strength that makes humans look like toddlers. They can hang from one arm for extended periods, supporting their entire body weight plus additional load without visible effort. A human trying that would dislocate their shoulder. So every great ape, every close primate relative we have, is dramatically, overwhelmingly stronger than we are, which means the strength loss isn't a human thing, it's a Homo sapiens thing. Because even earlier hominins, even our direct ancestors, were probably stronger than we are. Neanderthals, for example. We have their bones. We can analyze their muscle attachment points, the ridges and grooves on bones where muscles connected. And those attachment points are massive, far larger and more robust than modern human bones, which means Neanderthals had significantly more muscle mass and significantly more strength. Estimates vary, but most researchers think Neanderthals were at least 30 to 50% stronger than modern humans. Maybe more. They lived in Ice Age Europe. They hunted megafauna. They survived in brutal conditions without advanced tools or shelters. They needed to be strong, and they were. Homo erectus, one of our earlier ancestors, also shows signs of extreme robustness, thicker bones, larger muscle attachment sites, evidence of a body built for hard, physical labor. They didn't have the tools we have. They didn't have fire mastery for most of their existence. They needed their bodies to do the work, and their bodies delivered. So the question becomes even stranger. If our ancestors were strong, if every primate around us is strong, if strength is clearly advantageous for survival, why did modern humans, specifically Homo sapiens, become so weak? What changed in the last 200,000 years that made losing strength beneficial? Some researchers point to the development of complex language. The argument goes like this. Once humans developed the ability to communicate complex ideas, to plan, to coordinate, to pass down knowledge, we didn't need individual strength anymore. We could hunt in groups using strategy. We could defend ourselves with coordinated tactics. We could build shelters, make clothing, control fire, all things that reduce the need for raw physical power. In that environment, being weak wasn't a disadvantage, as long as you were smart and socially connected. This makes sense, but it raises another question. If strength stopped being necessary, why did it disappear so quickly? Evolution doesn't usually work that fast. Traits that are neutral, that don't help or hurt survival, tend to stick around for a long time. They drift. They fluctuate, but they don't vanish in just a few thousand generations. The fact that human strength dropped so dramatically, so quickly, suggests it wasn't just neutral. It suggests there was active selection against strength. That being strong was somehow a disadvantage, and that's where things get speculative. Because what disadvantage could strength possibly have? One theory: energy cost. Muscle is expensive. Maintaining muscle mass requires constant caloric input. If you're living in an environment where food is unpredictable, where you might go days without eating, carrying extra muscle is a liability. It's dead weight. It burns energy you don't have. So natural selection might have favored individuals with less muscle mass, individuals who could survive on fewer calories. This is called the thrifty gene hypothesis, and it's been proposed for other traits like fat storage. But here's the problem. Chimpanzees also live in environments where food is unpredictable. They also face periods of scarcity, and they didn't lose their strength. So the energy cost explanation, while plausible, doesn't fully fit. Another theory, fine motor control. Humans have incredibly precise hand movements. We can thread needles, we can paint, we can perform surgery, we can play musical instruments. No other primate can do this. And some researchers think there's a trade-off between strength and precision. The neural wiring required for fine motor control might be incompatible with the neural wiring for explosive strength. You can't have both. So as humans developed better and better hand control, better tool-making ability, better dexterity, we lost strength. Not because we didn't need it, but because the brain couldn't optimize for both at once. This is an interesting idea, and there's some evidence for it. Studies show that people with higher grip strength tend to have slightly worse fine motor control, and vice versa. The neural pathways are different, but whether this trade-off is significant enough to explain a 5-fold strength loss, that's unclear. Then there's the social brain hypothesis. This one's mere abstract, but it goes like this. Humans are extremely social. Our survival depends on complex social networks, on cooperation, on reputation, on being trusted and liked by the group. In a species like that, being physically intimidating might actually be a disadvantage. If you're too strong, too aggressive, too dominant, other members of the group might see you as a threat. They might exclude you. They might refuse to cooperate with you. And in a species where cooperation is everything, being excluded is a death sentence. So there might have been selection for less threatening individuals. For people who were weaker, less aggressive, more approachable, people you'd want to work with instead of fear. This is sometimes called self-domestication. The idea that humans, over time, selected for traits similar to what we see in domesticated animals. Reduced aggression, smaller jaws and teeth, more gracile skeletons, less intimidating physical presence, and yes, reduced strength. Dogs, compared to wolves, are weaker, smaller, less aggressive, because we selected for tameness. Did humans do the same thing to themselves? Did we select for social compatibility over physical dominance? It's possible. There's evidence that human skeletons have become more gracile over the last 50,000 years, less robust, more refined, closer to what you'd see in a juvenile primate than an adult. This is called neoteny, the retention of juvenile features into adulthood, and it's associated with domestication. But whether this explains the entire strength gap, whether social selection alone could cause such a dramatic physical change, that's still debated. Here's what we know for sure. Humans are weak. Dramatically weaker than chimpanzees, weaker than gorillas, weaker than orangutans, probably weaker than our own ancestors. The strength gap is real. It's measurable. It's undeniable. We also know the mechanism. Humans have more slow-twitch muscle fibers and fewer fast-twitch fibers. We have less muscle mass overall. We have different neural control of muscle activation. All of this is documented. What we don't know, what scientists are still arguing about, is why. Why did this happen? What evolutionary pressure made losing strength more advantageous than keeping it? Was it energy conservation? Was it fine motor control? Was it social compatibility? Was it tool use? Was it diet? Was it some combination of all of these? Or was it something else entirely, something we haven't considered yet? The answer probably involves multiple factors. Evolution is rarely simple. Traits don't change for one clean reason. They change because of overlapping pressures, feedback loops, environmental shifts, genetic drift, and random mutations that happen to stick around. But the speed and scale of human strength loss suggests there was a strong, consistent pressure, something that made being weak actively beneficial, not just tolerable, beneficial. And figuring out what that was, that's the mystery. Now let's talk about what this means for you. Right now, in the modern world, because human weakness isn't just an evolutionary curiosity. It has real practical consequences. For one thing, it makes us fragile, physically fragile. Compared to other primates, humans are incredibly easy to injure. We break bones more easily. We tear muscles more easily. We dislocate joints more easily. Our bodies are delicate. This is partly because of our skeletons, which have become more gracile, less dense, less robust over time. But it's also because our muscles don't protect us the way primate muscles protect them. A chimpanzee can take a fall that would shatter a human's bones and walk away with bruises. Their muscle mass acts as armor, cushioning impacts, absorbing force. Humans don't have that. We're soft, vulnerable. One bad fall and we're out of commission for weeks. Modern medicine has made this less of an immediate survival issue. We can set bones. We can repair torn ligaments. We can rehabilitate injuries. But evolutionarily, this fragility should have been selected against. Being easy to injure should be a massive disadvantage. And yet, we thrived. Which suggests that whatever advantages we gained from being weak outweighed the disadvantages of being fragile. Another consequence, we can't defend ourselves physically, not against large predators, not against other large animals, not even against smaller, aggressive animals. A wild boar can kill an unarmed human. A large dog can overpower an unarmed human. Hell, an angry goose can send a full-grown adult running. We are not physically intimidating. We're not built for hand-to-hand combat with anything larger than a house cat. And even then, it's a toss-up. This means that for the vast majority of human history, our survival depended entirely on tools, on weapons, on fire, on shelter, on staying the hell away from anything that could hurt us. We couldn't fight a lion, we couldn't fight a bear, we couldn't even fight a wolf pack. So, we avoided them, or we used spears, or we set traps, or we worked in groups large enough that predators stayed away. Strength wasn't optional for us, it was impossible, so we had to get creative. And that creativity, that reliance on intelligence and tools instead of physical power, that became our defining trait. But it also made us dependent. Humans, more than any other species, rely on culture, on knowledge passed down from generation to generation. A human raised in isolation, with no teaching, no tools, no cultural knowledge, would be almost helpless. They wouldn't know how to make fire. They wouldn't know how to hunt effectively. They wouldn't know which plants are safe. They'd be weaker than their ancestors, weaker than every primate relative, and almost certainly doomed. This is unique. Most animals are born with the instincts they need. A lion cub doesn't need to be taught how to hunt. It figures it out. A chimpanzee doesn't need to be taught how to climb. It just does. But humans, we need teaching. We need culture. We need to inherit knowledge, because our bodies alone aren't enough. And that's a direct consequence of our weakness. We traded physical capability for cognitive capability. We became dependent on our brains, on our tools, on our social structures, and that dependency has shaped every aspect of human civilization. Now here's where it gets interesting. In the modern world, human weakness doesn't matter. Not the way it used to. We don't need to fight predators. We don't need to chase down prey. We don't need to lift heavy objects with our bare hands. We have machines for that. We have technology. We have infrastructure. Physical strength in modern industrialized society is almost irrelevant, which means the selection pressure that drove us to become weak has disappeared. There's no advantage anymore to being weak, but there's also no advantage to being strong. Strength is neutral, and in a neutral environment, traits drift. So what's happening to human strength right now in the 21st century? It's declining rapidly. Studies comparing modern humans to humans from just 100 years ago show measurable drops in grip strength, bone density, muscle mass, cardiovascular fitness. We're getting weaker, not because of evolution. Evolution works over thousands of years. This is happening in decades. It's environmental. Modern lifestyles are sedentary. We don't walk long distances anymore. We don't lift heavy things. We don't climb. We don't fight. We sit. We type. We drive. We use elevators. And our bodies are responding to that environment by shedding muscle mass, by becoming even weaker. This isn't genetic, it's phenotypic. If you took a modern human and raised them in a physically demanding environment, they'd develop more muscle, more strength, more resilience. The genes are still there, but the environment isn't triggering them. So we're seeing an accelerated version of what happened over millennia, humans adapting to an environment where strength doesn't matter, and the result is weakness. Extreme, unprecedented weakness. But here's the kicker. Some researchers think this might be a problem, not for survival, we'll survive just fine, but for health, because muscle mass isn't just about strength, it's about metabolism, it's about bone density, it's about injury prevention, it's about longevity. People with higher muscle mass live longer, they have better metabolic health, they're more resilient to illness, they recover faster from injury. So as humans get weaker, we might be setting ourselves up for health crises, increased osteoporosis, increased metabolic disease, increased frailty in old age. All because we've created an environment where strength is optional. And when something's optional, we tend not to bother. Which brings us back to the central question. Why did humans lose their strength? And the answer, the frustrating, unsatisfying answer, is that we don't fully know. We have theories, we have data, we have educated guesses, but the complete picture, the exact combination of pressures and adaptations and trade-offs that made modern humans so much weaker than every other primate, that's still being debated. What we do know is that it wasn't an accident. Evolution doesn't make accidents on this scale. This was a trade-off. Strength for something else, power for precision, muscle for brain, aggression for cooperation, individual dominance for social harmony. Whatever the exact mechanism, whatever the specific pressures, the result is undeniable. Humans are weak. Weaker than we should be. Weaker than we were. Weaker than we could be. And yet, here we are. The most successful species on the planet. Not because of strength, but in spite of weakness. That's the paradox. That's the mystery. And that's what makes this so endlessly fascinating. Let's go deeper into the biology, because understanding why we're weak requires understanding how muscles actually work. And it's more complex than most people realize. Your muscles are made up of fibers, long, thin cells bundled together like cables. Each fiber contains thousands of smaller units called myofibrils, and each myofibril contains the contractile proteins that actually generate force, actin and myosin. When your brain sends a signal to contract a muscle, these proteins slide past each other, pulling the muscle fiber shorter, generating tension. The more fibers you can activate at once, the more force you generate. Simple. But here's where it gets interesting. Not all muscle fibers are the same. Type I fibers, slow twitch fibers, are built for endurance. They contract slowly. They don't generate much force, but they resist fatigue. They can keep working for hours. Type 2A fibers are intermediate. They're faster than type 1, stronger than type Y, but still relatively fatigue-resistant. Type 2X fibers, fast twitch fibers, are built for power. They contract quickly. They generate massive force, but they fatigue fast. They're the sprinter fibers, the explosive power fibers. The fibers you need to jump high, throw hard, lift heavy. Humans have all three types, but compared to chimpanzees, we have way more type 1 and way fewer type 2X. Chimpanzees are the opposite. Their muscles are dominated by fast twitch fibers, which is why they're so strong. They can generate explosive force in an instant. Humans can't. We're built for slow, steady effort, for endurance, not for power. Now, why did this happen? Why did our muscle fiber composition shift so dramatically away from power and toward endurance? One theory: persistence hunting. Early humans, especially in Africa, developed a hunting strategy unlike anything else in nature. We didn't chase prey down in a sprint. We couldn't. We were too slow. Instead, we followed prey for hours, sometimes days, walking, jogging, tracking, never letting the animal rest, never letting it cool down. Humans are one of the best endurance runners on the planet. Not fast, but relentless. We can run for hours in the heat of the day. Most animals can't. Most animals overheat. They have to stop. They have to rest. But humans don't overheat as easily. We have sweat glands all over our body. We can regulate temperature while moving. We can keep going when everything else stops. So the strategy was simple. Find an antelope. Chase it. Not fast, just steady. It runs away. You follow. It stops to rest. You keep walking. It runs again. You follow. Eventually, hours later, the antelope collapses from exhaustion and overheating, and you walk up and kill it. This strategy works. It's been documented in modern hunter-gatherers. The San people of southern Africa still practice persistence hunting, and it requires endurance, not strength, not speed. Endurance. So if early humans relied heavily on persistence hunting, natural selection would favor individuals with more type 1 fibers. Individuals who could keep going longer. And over thousands of generations, that's exactly what happened. We became endurance specialists at the cost of power. But here's the problem with this theory. Persistence hunting, while effective, probably wasn't the primary food source for early humans. It's too risky, too time-consuming, too dependent on conditions. Most of our calories probably came from scavenging, from gathering, from opportunistic hunting, from fishing, from a mix of strategies. So, while persistence hunting might have contributed to the shift toward endurance, it probably wasn't the only factor. Another factor, thermoregulation. Humans are really good at staying cool. We're one of the few mammals that can function in extreme heat, and that's largely because we have less muscle mass. Muscle generates heat, a lot of heat. Chimpanzees, with their dense, powerful muscles, overheat quickly if they exert themselves in hot conditions. They have to stay in the shade. They have to rest frequently. Humans don't. We can work in the sun. We can walk all day in a 100-degree heat. And we don't overheat because we have less muscle generating less heat. So in the hot, open savannas of Africa, where early humans lived, being less muscular might have been an advantage. Not because we needed less strength, but because we needed better temperature regulation. And once again, the trade-off. Strength for cooling, power for persistence. But let's talk about what we actually gave up. Because it's not just raw strength, it's a whole suite of physical abilities that modern humans simply can't do. Climbing. Humans are terrible climbers. Compared to any other primate, we're embarrassingly bad. A chimpanzee can climb a vertical tree trunk with ease. No branches, no handholds, just grip and pull. Humans can't do that. We need branches. We need footholds. We struggle. Even trained rock climbers, people who spend years developing grip strength and technique, can't match what a chimpanzee does casually, because we don't have the muscle structure for it. Our fingers aren't strong enough. Our shoulders aren't built for pulling our full body weight repeatedly. We're not arboreal anymore. We gave that up when we started walking upright, and we can't get it back. Jumping. Humans have terrible vertical jumps. Even elite athletes, people who train specifically for jumping, max out around 40 to 50 inches. A chimpanzee can leap several feet vertically from a standstill. No running start, just explosive leg power. We don't have that. Our leg muscles are built for walking and running, not for explosive jumps. We can't generate that kind of force. Throwing. Now this one's interesting, because humans are actually really good at throwing, better than any other primate. We can throw objects with incredible speed and accuracy. Chimpanzees can't. Their shoulder structure doesn't allow for it. But here's the thing. Throwing isn't about strength. It's about coordination. It's about timing. It's about the precise sequencing of muscle activations from your legs, through your core, through your shoulder, through your arm. It's a whole body motion. And humans are uniquely good at it because our shoulder joints are incredibly mobile. We sacrifice stability for range of motion, which makes our shoulders easier to injure but allows us to throw. So even in the one physical task where humans excel, it's not because of strength, it's because of coordination. Again, precision over power, carrying capacity. Humans can't carry much weight, not compared to other primates. A chimpanzee can carry a significant portion of its body weight in its hands while climbing. Humans struggle to carry 50 pounds for any distance. We need tools. We need backpacks. We need carts. We can't just pick something up and walk with it the way other primates can. We're too weak. Fighting ability. This one's obvious. Humans cannot fight other primates hand to hand, not even close. A chimpanzee would tear an unarmed human apart. A gorilla would kill a human in seconds. Even a smaller primate like a baboon could seriously injure or kill an unarmed human. We have no natural weapons. Our teeth are flat and weak. Our jaws have no power. Our hands can't grip hard enough to do real damage. We can't scratch, can't bite, can't grapple effectively. We're defenseless. Without tools, without weapons, a human is one of the most physically vulnerable large mammals on the planet. And yet, we survived. We didn't just survive, we thrived. Which means that whatever we lost in strength, we more than made up for in other ways. And those other ways, that's what we need to understand. Because the human strength mystery isn't really about strength. It's about trade-offs. It's about what we gained when we gave up power. So what did we gain? Let's start with the obvious one. Fine motor control. Humans have the most precise hand movements of any animal. We can manipulate tiny objects. We can thread needles. We can write. We can paint. We can perform surgery. We can play instruments. We can build watches. No other animal can do this. Not even close. Chimpanzees have strong hands, but they don't have fine motor control. They can't do delicate tasks. Their fingers move in broad, sweeping motions, powerful but imprecise. Human hands are different. We have longer thumbs, more flexible finger joints, better neural control of individual finger movements, and this precision is directly related to our weakness. Because fine motor control requires a different type of neural wiring than raw strength. The motor neurons that control precise movements are different from the neurons that control powerful movements. You can't optimize for both. So as humans developed better and better tool use, better and better manipulation ability, we traded strength for precision. And that precision allowed us to make increasingly complex tools. Stone tools, bone tools, eventually metal tools. We could carve, we could sew, we could build. And those abilities, those skills, gave us advantages that strength never could. A strong animal can kill prey with its hands. A precise animal can make a spear and kill prey from a distance. Guess which strategy is safer and more effective? Precision wins. Every time. Another thing we gained. Endurance. We already talked about this, but it bears repeating. Humans are endurance machines. We can walk for days. We can run for hours. We can keep moving when every other animal has to stop and rest. This is because our muscles are built for it. More type 1 fibers. Better cardiovascular systems. Better thermoregulation. And this endurance gave us a massive advantage. We could migrate. We could cover vast distances in search of food, in search of new territory. We spread across the entire planet on foot. No other large mammal did that. We walked out of Africa. We walked across Asia. We walked across Europe. We crossed land bridges into the Americas. We reached Australia. We populated every continent except Antarctica, and we did it by walking. Relentlessly. Tirelessly. Our endurance made us the most successful migratory species in Earth's history. Strength doesn't do that. Endurance does. We also gained social cohesion. This one's harder to measure, but it matters. Humans are incredibly social. We cooperate at levels that no other primate does. We share food. We share knowledge. We raise each other's children. We form alliances. We build networks that span entire continents. And part of that cooperation, part of what makes humans able to work together so well, is that we're not threatening to each other. Physically, a chimpanzee group is held together by dominance, by physical intimidation. The strongest males dominate the weaker ones. Aggression is constant. Violence is common. Humans aren't like that. We have hierarchies, but they're not based primarily on physical strength. They're based on intelligence, on social skill, on cooperation. A weak human can lead a group if they're smart and socially capable. That doesn't happen in chimpanzee society. Physical dominance is everything. So by becoming weaker, by becoming less threatening, humans might have enabled a different kind of social structure, one based on cooperation instead of domination. And that social structure, that ability to work together, to share, to teach, to build cultures that gave us advantages no amount of physical strength could match, because strength is individual, cooperation is collective, and collective power always beats individual power. Always. A single chimpanzee can overpower a single human. But 10 humans working together with tools, with strategy, with communication can overpower any chimpanzee, can overpower any animal. Cooperation scales, strength doesn't. So what we're really looking at isn't a loss, it's a trade. We gave up individual power for collective power. We gave up brute strength for intelligence and coordination. We gave up physical dominance for social cohesion, and in every case, the trade was worth it. Because here we are, the weakest great ape, and also the most successful. But let's not romanticize this, because there's a dark side to human weakness, a cost that we're still paying. Vulnerability. Modern humans, especially in industrialized societies, are shockingly vulnerable to physical harm. We injure easily, we break easily, we're soft. And in the modern world, where we're surrounded by hard surfaces, by machines, by vehicles, by infrastructure built for efficiency rather than safety, that softness is a problem. Falls that would bruise a chimpanzee can kill a human. Impacts that other animals walk away from send humans to the hospital. We're fragile, and that fragility has real consequences. Modern medicine compensates. We can repair injuries that would have been fatal a century ago. But we're still vulnerable, still weak, still easily broken. Another cost: dependency. Humans are completely dependent on culture, on tools, on technology. Without them, we're helpless. Take a modern human, drop them in a wilderness with nothing, and they probably won't survive. Not because they're not intelligent, but because they don't have the physical capability to exploit the environment without tools. They can't kill large animals with their hands, they can't climb trees to escape predators, they can't dig effectively without tools. They're dependent. And that dependency makes us vulnerable in ways other species aren't. If human civilization collapsed, if we lost our technology, our knowledge, our tools, most of us would die. We don't have the physical capability to survive on our own. We need the collective, we need culture, and that's a direct result of our weakness. There's also the issue of modern lifestyle. We talked about this earlier, but it's worth emphasizing. Modern humans are getting weaker, not over evolutionary time. Over decades, our lifestyles are sedentary. We don't use our bodies the way our ancestors did. We don't walk long distances. We don't lift heavy things. We don't climb. We don't run. We sit, and our bodies are responding by shedding muscle mass. Studies show that grip strength, a basic measure of overall strength, has declined significantly in the last 30 years. Young people today are weaker than their parents were at the same age, and their parents were weaker than their grandparents. This isn't genetic, it's environmental, but it's real, and it has consequences. Weaker muscles mean weaker bones. Weaker bones mean more fractures, more osteoporosis, more injuries. Weaker muscles mean worse metabolism, more diabetes, more obesity, more chronic disease. Weaker muscles mean less resilience, slower recovery from illness, higher frailty in old age. So by creating an environment where strength doesn't matter, where we can survive without physical capability, we've made ourselves even weaker than evolution already made us, and we're paying for it. In health outcomes, in quality of life, in longevity. The irony is profound. We gave up strength to gain intelligence and cooperation, and then we use that intelligence to build a world where strength doesn't matter, and now we're suffering because we're too weak. It's a feedback loop, an unintended consequence of our own success. So here's where we are. Humans are weak, dramatically weaker than our closest relatives, weaker than our ancestors, and getting weaker every generation. We know the mechanism. Muscle fiber composition. Less fast twitch, more slow twitch, less muscle mass overall. We know the trade-off. Strength for endurance, power for precision. Individual dominance for social cooperation. We know the consequences. Vulnerability, dependency, declining physical health. What we don't fully know is why. Why specifically did this trade-off happen? What exact combination of environmental pressures, genetic mutations, and selective advantages drove this change? And that's the mystery. The part where science gives you probabilities instead of answers. Maybes instead of certainties. We're still figuring it out, still debating, still discovering. But here's what's not a mystery. Human weakness was the foundation of human success. Without it, we wouldn't have developed the tools, the cooperation, the intelligence that made us dominant. We'd still be strong, but we'd still be in the trees or on the savannas, competing with other animals for resources, living short, brutal lives. Instead, we became weak, and we conquered the world. That's the paradox. The thing that should have doomed us became our greatest advantage because it forced us to be creative, to cooperate, to think. And thinking, it turns out, beats strength every time. Now let's talk about you. If you're watching this, you're almost certainly a modern human, which means you're weak. Probably weaker than you think you are, and definitely weaker than your ancestors. But you're also alive, comfortable, safe. You're not being chased by predators. You're not fighting for survival. You're not dependent on your physical strength for anything critical. And that's because your ancestors, thousands of generations ago, gave up strength so that you wouldn't have to use it. They traded power for tools, muscle for brains, individual capability for collective civilization. And here you are. The end result of that trade-off. Weak, but successful. So what does that mean for how you live? Should you try to regain some of that lost strength? Should you train, lift weights, build muscle? Some people say yes. They argue that modern weakness is a health crisis, that we need to reconnect with physical capability, that strength matters even in a technological world. Others say no. They argue that strength is irrelevant now, that mental and social skills are all that matter, that spending time building muscle is a waste when you could be building knowledge. Both perspectives have merit. But here's my take. Strength in the modern world is optional. You don't need it to survive. But optional doesn't mean useless. Building strength, maintaining muscle mass, staying physically capable, those things have benefits beyond just being able to lift heavy objects. They improve health, they improve confidence, they improve resilience. They connect you to your body in ways that modern life often disconnects you from. So maybe the answer isn't to become as strong as possible. Maybe it's to recognize that strength, while no longer necessary for survival, is still valuable for living well. And that's the final irony of the human strength mystery. We gave up strength to survive. And now that we've survived, now that we've built a world where strength doesn't matter, we're realizing that maybe it still does. Not for survival, but for thriving, for health, for connection to the physical world, for remembering that we're not just brains in jars. We're animals, weak animals, but animals nonetheless, and maybe, just maybe, reconnecting with that, with our physicality, with our bodies, even though they're weak, maybe that matters. Not because we need it, but because it's part of who we are, part of the trade-off that made us human. So where does this leave us? We've gone from chimpanzee strength to human weakness, from muscle fibers to evolutionary trade-offs, from ancient savannas to modern gyms. And through it all, one question keeps coming back. Why are we so weak? And the answer, the frustrating, incomplete, still being researched answer, is that we traded strength for something better. For endurance, for precision, for cooperation, for intelligence, for the ability to build civilizations instead of just surviving in the wild. We gave up the ability to fight a chimpanzee and gained the ability to build spaceships. We gave up the ability to climb trees effortlessly and gained the ability to write symphonies. We gave up raw power and gained everything that makes us human. Was it worth it? Look around, we're here, everywhere, 7 billion of us, spread across the planet, living longer, healthier, more comfortable lives than any species in Earth's history. Yeah, it was worth it. But the mystery remains. The exact mechanism, the precise evolutionary path that took us from strong to weak, that's still being uncovered. Still being debated, still being researched. And maybe that's fitting. Because the story of human weakness is really the story of human intelligence. And intelligence, it turns out, is really good at solving mysteries. Even mysteries about itself. So if you're still awake, if you've made it this far, drop a comment. Tell me where you're listening from. Tell me what time it is. Tell me if you've ever arm wrestled a chimpanzee. Okay, probably not that last one. But tell me what you think. Do you wish you were stronger? Do you think modern humans are too weak? Do you think strength still matters? Or do you think we've moved beyond it? I'm curious, because this isn't just an academic question. It's personal. It's about who we are, what we've lost, what we've gained, and what we're becoming. And if this pulled you in, if it made you think differently about your own body, your own capabilities, your own place in the long arc of human evolution, then take a second to like this video, to share it, to subscribe, because there are more mysteries where this came from, more questions about what makes us human, more investigations into the trade-offs, the accidents, the evolutionary quirks that shaped our species. We're weak, but we're also fascinating. And understanding why we're weak helps us understand why we're successful. The two are connected, inseparable, part of the same story. The story of how weakness became strength, how vulnerability became advantage, how losing power gave us everything. That's the human story. And it's not over yet. We're still evolving, still changing, still adapting to environments we create. And who knows, maybe in another few thousand years humans will be even weaker, or maybe we'll regain strength. Maybe we'll use genetic engineering to redesign our muscles. Maybe we'll merge with machines and strength will become irrelevant. Maybe we'll colonize other planets and adapt to different gravitational forces. The future is open, but the past is clear. We were strong. We became weak, and in becoming weak, we became unstoppable. That's the paradox. That's the mystery. That's the answer we're still searching for. Sleep well, and when you wake, remember this. You are weak, but your ancestors gave you something worth far more than strength. They gave you a brain that can understand why you're weak, tools that make strength irrelevant, and a civilization built on cooperation instead of power. That's the trade. And it's the best deal humanity ever made. The enigma continues, but let's not stop there, because there's so much more to explore. So many angles we haven't fully examined. So many implications we haven't unpacked. The story of human weakness goes deeper than muscles and evolution. It touches everything. how we think, how we live, how we see ourselves. Let's talk about exceptions, because not all humans are equally weak. Some populations, some individuals, some genetic lineages retain more strength than others. Why? Is it genetics? Is it environment? Is it both? The answer matters, because it tells us whether human weakness is universal and fixed, or variable and flexible. Start with populations. Some ethnic groups show consistently higher muscle mass and strength than others. West Africans, for example, particularly those from specific regions, tend to have higher proportions of fast-twitch muscle fibers, more type 2 SNCs, more explosive power. This is why, statistically, athletes of West African descent dominate in sports requiring speed and power. Sprinting, jumping, explosive movements. It's not stereotyping. It's measurable biology. The genetic variants that influence muscle fiber type show clear geographic patterns. Similarly, Scandinavian populations, particularly those from northern regions, tend to have higher bone density and more robust skeletal structure. Adaptations to cold climates, to vitamin D scarcity, to the physical demands of surviving in harsh northern environments. These populations, on average, are stronger than tropical populations. Not massively, but measurably. Then there's the individual level. Some people, through genetic luck, are born with muscle structures that respond better to training. They build strength faster. They retain it longer. They have favorable hormone profiles, favorable muscle fiber distributions, favorable tendon attachments. These people, if they train, become incredibly strong. Not chimpanzee strong, but strong for humans. Powerlifters, strongmen competitors, Olympic weightlifters. These athletes can lift 2, 3, 4 times their body weight. They can deadlift 800 pounds. They can squat 1,000 pounds. They can overhead press weight that would crush an untrained person. And yet even these genetic outliers, even these individuals who've spent years optimizing their strength, are still weaker than a chimpanzee. A 150-pound chimpanzee could outlift a 300-pound human powerlifter easily. The strength gap is that large. Which brings us to an uncomfortable question. Could we close it? Could humans, through training, through genetic engineering, through pharmaceutical intervention, become as strong as chimps? The answer is complicated. Through training alone? No. You can't change your muscle fiber type distribution dramatically through training. You're born with a certain ratio of slow twitch to fast twitch. Training can optimize what you have, but it can't fundamentally restructure your muscles. Through pharmaceuticals, steroids, growth hormone, other performance-enhancing drugs can increase muscle mass significantly, but they don't change fiber type. They don't give you chimpanzee muscles. They just make your human muscles bigger. You become stronger, but you're still limited by human biology. Through genetic engineering. Now we're getting somewhere. In theory, you could edit the genes that control muscle development. You could introduce variants that increase fast-twitch fiber production. You could modify the regulatory pathways that limit muscle growth. You could, in theory, give a human chimpanzee-like muscles, but we don't know what the consequences would be. Because muscles don't exist in isolation. They're connected to bones, to tendons, to joints, to cardiovascular systems. Chimpanzee muscles generate forces that human bones and tendons aren't built to handle. If you gave a human chimpanzee strength without also modifying their skeletal structure, their connective tissue, their entire biomechanical system, they'd probably tear themselves apart. Literally, their tendons would snap, their bones would fracture, their joints would dislocate. So making humans as strong as chimps would require redesigning the entire body, not just muscles, everything. And at that point, are you even human anymore? Or have you created something new? This isn't science fiction. This is the direction biotechnology is heading. Gene editing, synthetic biology, enhancement. The question isn't whether we'll be able to modify human strength. The question is whether we should. The choice is yours. The enigma continues. Now let's discuss something that most people never think about. The psychological impact of being weak. How does knowing you're vulnerable, knowing you can't defend yourself, knowing that a smaller animal could overpower you, how does that shape human psychology? More than you might think. Humans have what psychologists call a vulnerability complex. We're aware, consciously or not, that we're fragile, that we can be hurt, that we're not apex predators by physical merit. This awareness shapes everything: our anxiety, our need for security, our obsession with safety, our creation of laws, police forces, military structures. All of it stems from weakness, from knowing we can't protect ourselves individually. Think about it. Lions don't have police. Gorillas don't have armies. They don't need them. They're individually powerful enough to defend themselves. But humans? We need collective protection. We need systems of security because individually we're defenseless. This creates a unique psychological burden. The burden of dependence, of knowing you rely on others for safety, on society, on institutions, on the collective agreement that violence won't be tolerated. Take that away, remove those systems, and humans are terrified. Because we know what we are: weak, vulnerable, easy to harm. This fear, this awareness of fragility, it drives so much of human behavior. Our need for weapons, our need for walls, our need for locks on doors, our need for insurance, for health care, for safety nets. All of it is compensation for weakness. And it works, for the most part. We've created a world where physical weakness doesn't equal death, where the frail can survive, where strength doesn't determine survival. But the psychological residue remains. The fear, the awareness, the knowledge that without our systems, without our protections, we'd be helpless. This manifests in interesting ways. Horror movies, thriller novels, home invasion stories, zombie apocalypses, all of these tap into the primal fear of being physically overpowered, of being hunted, of being vulnerable. We're drawn to these stories because they reflect a deep truth. We are vulnerable. We could be overpowered. And without our tools, our weapons, our collective protections, we'd be prey. That's terrifying and fascinating because it's unique to humans. A chimpanzee doesn't fear being hunted. It's strong enough to defend itself. A gorilla doesn't lose sleep over predators. It's powerful enough to intimidate anything. But humans? We know we're weak, and we can't forget it. Even in our safest moments, even surrounded by security, the awareness is there, buried, suppressed, but present, and it shapes us. Our cultures, our stories, our dreams and nightmares. All of it reflects the central truth of human existence. We're weak, and we know it, and we're terrified of what that means. So we build, we create, we innovate, we construct elaborate systems of protection and security, not because we're strong, but because we're weak. And that weakness, that vulnerability, that fear, it might be the most human thing about us. More than our intelligence, more than our tool use, more than our language. It's our weakness and our awareness of it that defines us, that drives us, that makes us who we are. Now let's pivot to something more practical. What can modern science actually tell us about the mechanics of human weakness? Beyond evolution, beyond history, what's happening right now in your muscles as you lie there listening? Your muscles are constantly in flux, building, breaking down, rebuilding. This process is called protein turnover, and it happens whether you're active or sedentary. When you use a muscle, when you put stress on it, you create microscopic damage. Tiny tears in the muscle fibers. This sounds bad, but it's actually the mechanism by which muscles grow. Your body responds to damage by rebuilding the muscle slightly stronger, slightly more resistant to future damage. This is called adaptation, and it's how strength training works. You damage muscle, your body repairs it stronger. You repeat. Over time, you get stronger, but here's the limit. You can only build what your genetics allow. If you're human, you have a ceiling. A maximum strength potential determined by your muscle fiber type, your hormone levels, your skeletal structure. You can reach that ceiling through training, but you can't exceed it. Not without pharmaceuticals or genetic modification, and even then, you're still limited by human biology. This is why, no matter how much you train, you'll never be as strong as a chimpanzee. The ceiling is too low, but within that ceiling, there's variation. Some people have higher ceilings than others. This is genetic. If your parents were strong, you probably have a higher ceiling. If they were weak, yours is probably lower. Unfair? Maybe. But that's biology. Random. Indifferent to fairness. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Most modern humans never even approach their ceiling. They never train hard enough, consistently enough to reach their genetic potential. They live their entire lives at 20, 30, maybe 40% of their maximum possible strength. And that's fine. You don't need maximum strength to live a modern life. But it means we're weaker than we could be. Not just compared to chimps, but compared to our own potential. And that's a choice most people make unconsciously, the choice to be weak when they could be less weak. Again, that's not a judgment. Weakness is fine, weakness is normal, but it's worth being aware of the choice, of the fact that you could, if you wanted, be stronger, not chimpanzee strong, but stronger than you are now. And that strength, that additional capability, it has benefits, not just for survival, but for health, for independence, for confidence, for the simple satisfaction of knowing you've pushed your body to do what it's capable of. Most people never experience that. Most people live in a constant state of physical mediocrity. Not weak enough to be non-functional, but not strong enough to feel capable. They exist in the middle, the comfortable middle, where everything is easy enough to manage, but nothing is challenging enough to be interesting. And maybe that's fine. Maybe that's the right choice for most people, but maybe it's not. Maybe there's value in pushing, in exploring what your weak human body can actually do when you ask it to do more. Not to become a superhero, not to become an athlete, just to become less weak, more capable, more resilient, and to experience the satisfaction that comes from challenging yourself and succeeding, even in small ways, even in ways that don't matter to anyone but you. Because physical capability, even limited capability, is empowering. It changes how you see yourself, how you move through the world, how you respond to challenges. A person who knows they're physically capable, even within human limits, carries themselves differently than someone who knows they're weak. Not arrogant, just confident, secure, aware that their body can handle stress, can recover, can adapt. And that awareness, that confidence, It spills over into other areas of life, into work, into relationships, into decision-making. Because if you know you can get stronger, you start believing you can improve in other ways too. Physical training becomes a metaphor for everything else. For growth, for adaptation, for pushing past limits. And maybe that's the real value of strength training in a world where strength doesn't matter for survival. Not the strength itself, but what the pursuit of strength teaches you about discipline, about persistence, about incremental progress, about the satisfaction of setting a goal and achieving it. These lessons transfer. They apply to everything. And that's why, even in a technological world, even when weakness is acceptable, there's still value in choosing to be less weak. Not because you need it, but because the process of becoming stronger makes you better in ways that have nothing to do with muscles. Sleep well. And when you wake, consider this. What if you stopped accepting weakness as inevitable? What if you decided that while you can't change evolution, you can change yourself? Within limits, within your human ceiling. But still, what if you tried? Not to become superhuman, just to become a better version of the human you are. Stronger, more capable, more resilient. It's possible, it's achievable, and it might be worth it. Not for survival, not to fight chimpanzees, but for you. For the version of yourself you could be if you chose to try. The enigma of human weakness is solved. We know why we're weak. The real question is what you're going to do about it. The answer is yours. The choice is yours. The future is yours to write. One lift at a time. One step at a time. One choice at a time. Will you be as weak as evolution made you? Or will you be as strong as you can be? The enigma continues. But the answer is in your hands. Let's dive even deeper into the comparative biology. Because understanding exactly how chimpanzee and human muscles differ at the cellular level reveals the true extent of our weakness. It's not just quantity, it's quality. The architecture, the fundamental design. Chimpanzee muscle fibers are longer than human fibers. This matters because the length of a muscle fiber directly affects the force it can generate. Longer fibers, more contractile proteins, more force production. It's simple physics. Chimpanzee fibers are also thicker, more densely packed with myofibrils, the contractile units that do the actual work. This means each individual fiber can generate more force than a human fiber. Then there's the attachment points, where muscles connect to bones. These attachment sites determine mechanical advantage. Chimpanzees have attachment points positioned for maximum leverage. Their biceps, for example, attach further from the elbow joint than human biceps. This creates better leverage, more force output for the same muscle contraction. Humans have attachment points positioned for range of motion, for precision, not for power. Our biceps attach closer to the elbow, less leverage, less force, but more control, more ability to make fine adjustments. It's the same trade-off everywhere you look. Power for precision, strength for control. Chimpanzees chose power, humans chose control. And now we're stuck with the consequences. Let's talk about specific strength comparisons. Because when you break it down muscle group by muscle group, the weakness becomes undeniable. Upper body pulling strength. Chimpanzees. Off the charts. They can pull their entire body weight plus additional load one-handed, repeatedly, without apparent effort. Humans. Most can't do a single pull-up. Those who can, it's difficult. It requires training, and even trained humans max out at maybe 20, 30 pull-ups. Chimpanzees could probably do hundreds. We don't know the upper limit because we can't test them to exhaustion. They're too dangerous. Pushing strength. Chimpanzees can push objects weighing several times their body weight. Humans struggle to bench press their body weight. Trained humans can do more, maybe 1.5x, 2x body weight. Elite lifters, maybe 3x. But chimpanzees, untrained, no weightlifting, just natural strength, can push 5x, 6x, maybe more. We don't know the ceiling. Grip strength. We already covered this, but it's worth repeating. Chimpanzees, 1 to 300 pounds of force. Humans, 200 pounds. That's not a marginal difference. That's an overwhelming gap. A chimpanzee could crush a human hand in its grip, literally break bones, just by squeezing. Humans can't even come close to that kind of force. Leg strength. This is interesting because humans, being bipedal, have relatively strong legs compared to our arms, but compared to chimpanzee legs, still weaker. Chimpanzees can jump vertically several feet from a standstill. Humans, even trained jumpers, max out around 3 or 4 feet. And that's with a running start. Chimpanzees don't need a running start, just explosive leg power. Humans don't have that. Core strength. The muscles of the torso, the abs, the back, the muscles that stabilize your spine. Chimpanzees have disproportionately strong cores. They need them for climbing, for hanging, for the twisting, rotating movements they do constantly. Human cores are weaker. We're built for upright walking. We need spinal stability, not rotational power. So, our cores are designed differently. Less power, more endurance, same trade-off. Bite force. Chimpanzees, 2,300 psi. Enough to crack nuts, to tear meat from bone, to inflict devastating wounds. Humans, 200 psi. We struggle to bite through tough meat. We can't crack nuts with our teeth. We need tools. Always tools. Our jaws are weak. Our teeth are flat. We're not built for biting. We're built for chewing cooked food. And that's another piece of the puzzle. Cooking. The discovery of fire, the ability to cook food, fundamentally changed human evolution. Cooked food is softer, easier to chew, easier to digest. It provides more calories for less effort. And once humans started cooking regularly, we didn't need strong jaws. We didn't need big teeth. We didn't need powerful chewing muscles. So those traits atrophied. Our jaws got smaller. Our teeth got weaker. Our faces became flatter, less protruding, more gracile. This is called facial reduction, and it's been happening for at least 100,000 years. Modern humans have the smallest, weakest jaws of any hominin species. We can barely chew raw meat. We struggle with raw vegetables. We need everything cut, cooked, processed. We're dependent on food preparation in ways no other primate is. A chimpanzee can eat whatever it finds. Raw, tough, fibrous. Its jaws can handle it. Humans can't. We need tools. We need fire. We need culture. Because our biology alone isn't sufficient. This is a recurring theme. Human insufficiency. Human inadequacy. Human dependence. Everything about us screams, not built for this, not built for survival in the wild, not built for physical competition, not built for independence. And yet, here we are, 8 billion of us, spread across every environment, thriving in places no primate should be able to live. How? Intelligence, cooperation, culture. The stuff that doesn't show up in muscle fibers or bite force measurements. The stuff that makes us fundamentally different from every other primate. But let's not get too philosophical. Let's stay grounded in the physical, because there's more to explore. Injury patterns. Humans injure differently than chimpanzees. We tear ligaments. We strain muscles. We get stress fractures. All injuries that chimpanzees rarely experience. Why? Because we're pushing our weak structures to do things they're not designed for. A chimpanzee can hang from one arm for extended periods. Its ligaments and tendons are designed for that load. A human trying the same is likely to tear something. Rotator cuff injury, elbow tendonitis, wrist strain, we're not built for it. A chimpanzee can drop from a height that would break human bones. Its skeletal structure absorbs the impact. Humans break ankles, break legs, shatter bones from falls that primates walk away from. We're fragile, structurally compromised. Our bones are lighter, thinner, less dense. Good for bipedal locomotion, good for endurance, bad for impacts, bad for falls, bad for accidents. Modern humans are even worse because we don't stress our bones enough. We don't jump. We don't run on uneven terrain. We don't load our skeletons the way our ancestors did. So our bones are weaker than they should be. Even by human standards, this is called disuse osteopenia, bone loss from lack of use, and it's epidemic in modern populations, especially in older adults, but also in young people who spend their lives sitting. The solution is simple. Load-bearing exercise, jumping, running, lifting, anything that puts stress on your bones. Your bones respond by getting denser, stronger, more resistant to fracture, but most people don't do this. Most people minimize physical stress, they avoid discomfort, they avoid impact, and their bones suffer, becoming weaker every year, until eventually a minor fall becomes a life-threatening injury. This is preventable, but it requires going against the modern instinct to avoid physical stress. It requires choosing discomfort, choosing to jump, to run, to lift heavy things, not because it's fun, but because it's necessary for bone health, for long-term resilience, for maintaining the minimal physical capability that human biology provides. Now let's talk about aging, because human weakness becomes especially apparent as we get older. Young humans are weak, but they're functional. They can move. They can recover from injury. They have some resilience. Old humans lose even that. Sarcopenia, age-related muscle loss. It starts around age 30, slowly at first, 1% muscle mass loss per year. Doesn't sound like much, but it compounds. By age 50, you've lost 20% of your muscle mass. By age 70, 40% or more. And remember, you weren't strong to begin with. So losing 40% of already weak muscles leaves you extremely fragile. Many elderly humans can't get up from a chair without assistance, can't climb stairs, can't carry groceries, can't open jars. They've become so weak that basic tasks are impossible. This is not inevitable, it's preventable. Strength training, even in old age, can maintain muscle mass, can even build it back. There are 80-year-olds who lift weights and are stronger than sedentary 40-year-olds. But most people don't do this. Most people accept age-related weakness as inevitable. They stop moving, they stop challenging themselves, and they wither rapidly, preventably, tragically, because the difference between an active old person and a frail old person is stark. The active person maintains independence, maintains quality of life, maintains dignity. The frail person becomes dependent, needs assistance with basic tasks, loses autonomy, loses dignity. And it's not about genetics. It's not about luck. It's about choices made over decades, choices to move or not move, to challenge the body or let it atrophy, to maintain capability or accept decline. And those choices, those small daily choices, they determine how you age. Whether you age with strength and independence, or with weakness and dependence, the trajectory starts now. Not when you're 70, now. Every day you choose to move or not move, every day you choose to challenge yourself or take the easy path, you're writing your future, the you that will exist in 30, 40, 50 years. That person is being created by your choices today. Will that future you be strong, capable, independent, or will they be frail, dependent, helpless? The choice is yours, and it's being made right now, in this moment, as you lie there listening. Are you maintaining what little strength evolution gave you, or are you letting it slip away? These aren't rhetorical questions, they're real, they're urgent, because time is passing, muscle is being lost, and once it's gone, it's hard to get back. Not impossible, but hard. Harder than maintaining it. So maybe this is the wake-up call. Maybe this is the moment you decide, I'm weak, but I don't have to get weaker. I can maintain. I can stabilize. I can maybe even get a little stronger, within my limits, within my human ceiling. But still, I can choose to be less weak than I am now. And that choice, that decision, it might be the most important health decision you ever make. More important than diet. More important than supplements. More important than anything else. Because physical capability is the foundation of independence, of quality of life, of aging with dignity, and without it, everything else becomes harder. So, choose. Now. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now. Choose to maintain your weak human body, to use it, to challenge it, to prevent it from becoming weaker than it already is. That's the message. That's the takeaway. You're weak. You'll always be weak, but you don't have to be as weak as you could be. You can be the strongest version of your weak self, and that matters, more than you know. The enigma of human weakness is no longer an enigma. It's a known quantity, a documented reality, a biological fact. What you do with that fact, how you respond to it, that's up to you. Will you accept it? Will you work within it? Or will you ignore it until it's too late? The answer will determine the quality of your life. For decades to come, choose wisely. Choose now. Choose to move. The enigma continues, but the path forward is clear. Move your weak body. Use it. Challenge it. Maintain it. It's the only one you have. And despite its weakness, despite its limitations, it's capable of more than you think. If you let it be. If you give it the chance. If you stop accepting weakness as destiny and start seeing it as a baseline. A starting point, a minimum, not a maximum. Sleep well, wake strong, or at least less weak. That's all we can ask. That's all we can be. Less weak versions of weak animals. But that's enough. It has to be. Because it's all evolution gave us, and it's all we have to work with. The enigma ends here, the action begins now. Your move. There's another dimension to this story that we haven't fully explored. The role of human weakness in shaping our technology. Our entire technological civilization exists because we're weak. Think about it. If humans were as strong as chimpanzees, would we have invented so many tools? Would we have needed to? Probably not. A strong species can manipulate its environment with physical force. It can break things, move things, kill things with its body alone. A weak species can't. It needs leverage, it needs tools, it needs force multipliers. So humans invented them, started simple. Rocks for hammering, sticks for digging, sharpened stones for cutting. These weren't innovations born of curiosity. They were born of necessity, born of weakness. We couldn't kill prey with our hands, so we made spears. We couldn't break bones to extract marrow, so we made hammers. We couldn't cut meat with our teeth, so we made knives. Every tool is an admission of weakness, an acknowledgement that our bodies aren't enough. And as our technology advanced, as tools became more sophisticated, we became more dependent on them, and probably weaker, because we didn't need to maintain whatever strength we had. The tools did the work. This created a feedback loop. Weaker bodies need better tools. Better tools allow weaker bodies to survive. Weaker bodies reproduce, pass on genes for weakness. Next generation is weaker, needs even better tools, and so on, for thousands of generations, until you get modern humans, weak enough that we need tools for almost everything. Opening jars, carrying groceries, moving furniture. Things that a chimpanzee could do easily, we need mechanical assistance for. We've engineered our way out of needing strength, and in the process, we've lost even more of it. This isn't criticism, it's observation. Because this process, this co-evolution of human weakness and human technology, it's what made civilization possible. Agriculture required tools, plows, sickles, hoes. Humans weren't strong enough to work the soil with bare hands. So we invented tools that let weak bodies do the work of strong ones. Construction required tools, hammers, saws, levers. We couldn't lift massive stones, couldn't cut huge timbers. So we invented machines that could. Industry required tools, factories, engines, robots. We couldn't produce goods at scale with human muscle alone. So we built systems that didn't need human muscle. Every advancement was enabled by weakness. Every innovation was compensation for physical inadequacy. And now here we are, a species so weak we can barely function without technology, but also a species that has conquered the planet, that has reshaped the environment, that has reached into space, all because we were too weak to do it any other way. It's the ultimate irony. Our greatest weakness became our greatest strength, not the strength itself, but what the weakness forced us to create. Now let's address a controversial question. One that people don't like to ask. Are some humans deliberately kept weak? Are there social forces, economic forces, political forces that benefit from human weakness? This sounds like conspiracy theory territory, but hear me out. Physical weakness creates dependence. Dependent people need systems, need infrastructure, need authorities to provide security, to maintain order, to protect them. Independent, physically capable people don't need these things as much. They can protect themselves, they can provide for themselves, they're harder to control. So there might be systemic incentives to keep populations weak, not through deliberate conspiracy, but through the design of modern life. Cities designed for cars, not walking. Jobs designed for sitting, not moving. Food systems designed for convenience, not nutrition. Entertainment designed for passivity, not activity. None of this is accidental. It's profitable. Weak people need more products, need more services, need more assistance. They're better consumers, better economic units, better suited to the demands of modern capitalism. Strong, independent people are less profitable. They don't need as much. They can do more themselves. They're less dependent on systems. So the economy, the way we've structured society, it naturally favors weakness, not through malice, through incentives, through the logic of profit. And the result is generations of humans who are weaker than they need to be, not because of genetics, but because of design, of systems designed to minimize movement, to maximize sitting, to create dependence. Again, this isn't conspiracy, it's systems thinking. Understanding that the environment we've created produces weak humans as a natural outcome, and that changing this would require restructuring society in ways that reduce profit, that reduce efficiency, that prioritize human capability over economic output, which is why it won't happen. Not systemically. The only way to resist is individually. To choose to move in a world designed for sitting, to choose to walk in a world designed for driving, to choose to lift in a world designed for automated convenience. These choices won't change the system, but they'll change you. They'll make you less weak, less dependent, less profitable, but more capable, more independent, more resilient. And maybe that's enough. Maybe personal resistance is all that's possible. Maybe the system will continue to produce weak humans. And maybe that's inevitable. But you, individually, can opt out, can choose a different path, can choose to maintain your weak human body even when everything around you is designed to let it atrophy. That's the choice, the real choice, not whether humanity as a whole will become weaker. We will. That's baked in. But whether you, individually, will choose to be different, to resist the tide, to maintain capability in a world that doesn't value it, that's on you. And it matters, not for humanity, but for you, for your health, for your independence, for your future self, the self that will exist decades from now. That self is counting on you to make the right choices, to maintain what can be maintained, to resist what can be resisted. So resist. Choose strength in a world designed for weakness. Choose movement in a world designed for stillness. Choose capability in a world designed for dependence. It won't be easy. The path of least resistance leads to weakness. Always has. Always will. But the path less traveled, the path of effort and challenge and physical stress, that path leads somewhere better. To a stronger version of your weak self. And that's worth pursuing. Not because you'll become a superhero, but because you'll become more functional, more independent, more capable of living well, on your own terms, without complete dependence on systems and services. That's freedom. Real freedom. Not political freedom, not economic freedom, physical freedom. The freedom that comes from knowing your body works, that it can handle stress, that it won't fail you when you need it. That freedom is available to anyone who chooses it, to anyone willing to put in the work, to resist the designed weakness of modern life. Will you? That's the final question, the one that matters more than all the science, more than all the evolution, more than all the history. Will you choose to be less weak, or will you accept the weakness that the modern world offers? The answer will determine everything. Your health, your independence, your future. Choose wisely. Choose now. The enigma of human weakness ends here. What begins next is up to you. Before we close, let's explore one more angle. The comparative psychology of strength and weakness. How does being weak change the way humans think? How does it change our problem-solving strategies, our social behaviors, our entire cognitive approach to the world? This is fascinating territory, because chimpanzees and humans face the same problems: finding food, avoiding predators, competing for mates, raising offspring. But we solve these problems completely differently, and much of that difference stems from our weakness. Take food acquisition. A chimpanzee can simply overpower its food sources, tear apart termite mounds, break open nuts, rip fruit from trees, chase down smaller animals. Physical force solves most food problems. Humans can't do this. We're too weak. So we had to get creative. We invented traps, snares that kill animals while we sleep. We invented persistence hunting, following prey for hours until it collapses. We invented fishing, extracting calories from water without entering water. We invented agriculture, manipulating plant genetics to produce more food with less effort. Every strategy is compensation for weakness. Every innovation is an end run around physical limitations. And in developing these strategies, we developed cognitive abilities that chimpanzees don't have. Planning, the ability to think ahead, to prepare for future needs, to create systems that work while we don't. Abstract thinking, the ability to imagine tools and strategies that don't yet exist. To conceptualize solutions to problems we haven't encountered yet. Teaching, the ability to transfer knowledge across generations, to build on previous innovations, to create cumulative culture. None of these abilities are necessary for a strong species. A strong species solves problems with force, immediately, directly. No planning needed, no abstraction needed, no teaching needed. Strength is its own solution, but weakness forces complexity, forces intelligence, forces cooperation, because a weak individual can't survive alone, can't solve problems with force, has to think, has to plan, has to work with others. And those cognitive demands, those pressures, they shaped human brains, made us smarter, not because intelligence is inherently better, but because weakness made intelligence necessary. This is called cognitive compensation, the idea that weak bodies require strong minds, and the evidence supports it. Across the animal kingdom, species with physical limitations tend to develop greater cognitive flexibility. Crows, despite having small brains, are incredibly intelligent. They make tools. They solve complex problems. They plan for the future. Why? Because they're small, weak, vulnerable to predators. They can't survive on strength alone. So they developed intelligence. Same pattern in octopuses. Soft-bodied, no protective shell, easy prey, yet remarkably intelligent. Tool use, problem solving, camouflage strategies that require understanding of their environment, all cognitive compensation for physical weakness. Humans fit this pattern. We're the weakest great ape, and we're the smartest. Not coincidence. Causation. Our weakness necessitated our intelligence, and our intelligence enabled our success. But that success came at a cost, the cost of dependence. Humans are helpless without culture, without accumulated knowledge, without the vast body of skills and techniques that we've developed over thousands of generations. A human infant raised in isolation with no teaching, no cultural transmission, would be less capable than a chimpanzee infant. The chimpanzee would figure out how to find food, how to climb, how to survive. The human wouldn't. Humans require teaching, require cultural transmission, require the collective knowledge of our species. We're weak individually, strong collectively, and that collective strength, that's what changed everything. Because once humans developed the ability to transmit knowledge across generations, we created something no other species has. Cumulative culture. Each generation building on the last. Each generation adding new innovations, new techniques, new solutions. And those solutions accumulated over millennia gave us capabilities that far exceed what any individual could develop. You, right now, listening to this, are using technologies that required thousands of generations to develop. Language, writing, electronics, the internet. None of these could be created by a single person. All of them required countless individuals over countless generations, each adding a small piece. And that process, that cumulative culture, that's uniquely human, enabled by weakness. Because strength doesn't need cumulative solutions. Strength works in the present, uses the body directly, doesn't require multi-generational projects, but weakness does. Weakness forces planning, forces cooperation, forces knowledge transmission, and those forces over time created civilization. So when you think about human weakness, don't just think about what we lost. Think about what we gained. We lost the ability to fight chimpanzees. We gained the ability to split atoms. We lost the ability to climb trees effortlessly. We gained the ability to build skyscrapers. We lost physical power. We gained intellectual power. And intellectual power, it turns out, is vastly more potent. It scales, it compounds, it builds on itself. Physical power doesn't. A chimpanzee today is exactly as strong as a chimpanzee 1,000,000 years ago. Nothing has changed. Nothing will change. But a human today is incomparably more capable than a human even 1,000 years ago. Not because we're stronger, we're probably weaker, but because we have accumulated knowledge, accumulated technology, accumulated solutions to problems that our ancestors solved. That's the power of cumulative culture. That's the advantage of weakness, not the weakness itself, but what the weakness forced us to create. And that's why, despite being the weakest great ape, we're the most successful. Not just successful, dominant. We don't just survive. We reshape the planet. We determine the fate of other species. We've become, in a very real sense, the most powerful species Earth has ever seen. Not because of our bodies are pathetic, but because of our minds, and our ability to connect those minds across time and space, to build on what came before, to create what's never existed. That's human power. That's what weakness gave us, and it was worth it. Every broken bone, every torn muscle, every moment of physical inadequacy, worth it. Because the alternative, being strong like chimpanzees, would mean still being in the forests, still fighting for dominance, still living short, brutal lives, still being limited by what our bodies can do. Instead, we're here. Weak bodies, strong minds, limitless potential. And that's the trade humanity made. The trade that defines us. The trade that we can never undo. We are weak. Permanently, irreversibly, evolutionarily committed to weakness. And that's not a tragedy. It's our origin story, our foundational advantage, our path to dominance. So when you look at your weak arms, your fragile bones, your inadequate muscles, don't despair. You're looking at the price of civilization, the cost of intelligence, the physical manifestation of humanity's greatest achievement, being weak enough to need to be smart. And that's something to be proud of, not ashamed of, because in the grand competition of life on Earth, weakness didn't lose. Weakness won, decisively, completely. Humans are weak, and humans rule the world. That's the paradox. That's the mystery. That's the answer. Weakness, when paired with intelligence, becomes strength, the greatest strength of all, the strength to change the world itself. And we did. We are. We will continue to. Not because we're strong, but because we're weak. And weakness for humans was never a limitation. It was liberation from the tyranny of the physical, from the constraints of the body, into the realm of the mind, where anything is possible, where strength is measured not in pounds, but in ideas, where power comes not from muscles, but from innovation. And in that realm, humans are unmatched, unbeatable, unstoppable. Because we had to be. Because we were too weak to be anything else. So sleep well, weak human. Sleep knowing that your weakness is your heritage, your gift, your secret weapon. The thing that makes you more than just another ape. The thing that makes you human, And when you wake, remember this: you're weak, but you're also the most capable being that evolution has ever produced. Not despite your weakness, because of it. That's the final answer. That's the truth we've been building to. Human weakness wasn't a mistake. It was a masterstroke. Evolution's gambit. Trading muscle for mind. Power for potential. Strength for something far better. The ability to transcend strength entirely. And we did. We have. We are. Right now. Every moment. Weak bodies. Extraordinary minds. Limitless futures. That's humanity. That's us. That's you. Never forget it. Never regret it. Never wish you were strong like a chimpanzee. Because you're something better. Something smarter. Something that changed the world. And will continue to change it. For as long as our species exists, weak, fragile, unstoppable, that's the human story. And it's still being written. By you. By all of us. One weekday at a time. The enigma is solved. The mystery is answered. The truth is revealed. We're weak because being weak made us human. And being human made us everything. Sleep well. Dream of strength if you must. But know that you're already more powerful than strength alone could ever make you. Because you're human, and humans don't need strong bodies. We have something better, strong minds, and that's enough. More than enough. It's everything. The end of the enigma, the beginning of understanding. You are weak, you are human, you are enough. Always have been, always will be. Rest now. Your weak body has earned it. Your strong mind has proven it. And tomorrow you'll wake and do it all again. Being weak, being human, being enough. That's the story. That's the truth. That's the final word. Good night. One more thing before you drift off. Let's talk about what happens next. For our species, for human weakness, for the future of strength in a world that doesn't need it. Because we're at an inflection point. For the first time in human history, we have the power to change our own biology. Gene editing, CRISPR technology, designer genetics. We could, theoretically, make humans stronger, redesign our muscles, modify our genes, create a new human that doesn't have the weakness we've been discussing. Should we? That's the question we'll face in your lifetime. Maybe in the next decade. The technology is coming, the capability is developing, and someone, somewhere, will try it. They'll edit a human embryo, give it genes for stronger muscles, for denser bones, for greater physical capability. And that child, that genetically modified human, will be different, stronger than any natural human. Still not chimpanzee strong, probably, but stronger than we are now. And once that happens, once we start modifying human strength, there's no going back. Because if some humans are modified, others will want it too. Parents will want their children to be strong, to have advantages, to be enhanced. And slowly, over generations, humans might become stronger again. Not through evolution, through design, through choice. But here's the question. If we can make humans stronger, should we? What do we lose? We've spent this entire journey exploring how human weakness enabled everything good about our species, our intelligence, our cooperation, our technological advancement. All of it stems from weakness, from being forced to compensate. If we eliminate that weakness, do we eliminate the pressure that made us smart? Do we eliminate the need for cooperation? Do we eliminate the drive to innovate? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. We've never done this before. Never modified a fundamental trait that defines our species. Never removed a core pressure that shaped our evolution. We're in uncharted territory, and the decisions we make will affect humanity for millennia. So what should we choose? Strength or weakness? Power or intelligence? individual capability or collective cooperation? There's no obvious answer. Both paths have merit. Both paths have risks. But the choice is coming. Whether we're ready or not, and your generation, your children's generation, will have to navigate it. We'll have to decide what humanity becomes next. Do we remain weak, accepting our limitations, building on our intellectual strengths, continuing the path we've been on for 6 million years? Or do we redesign ourselves, eliminate our weakness, become physically capable in ways we've never been, and hope that we don't lose what made us successful? I don't have the answer. Nobody does. But it's worth thinking about. As you fall asleep, as you contemplate your weak human body, what do you want humanity to be? Strong or smart? Physical or intellectual? Individual or collective? The answer matters, because whatever we choose, we'll live with it forever. There's no undo button on genetic modification, no way to reverse fundamental changes to what makes us human. So we better choose carefully, better think deeply, better consider all the implications, not just the benefits of strength, but the costs, the trade-offs, the things we might lose in gaining physical power, because history teaches us one thing clearly. Human weakness wasn't a bug. It was a feature, the feature that enabled everything else. And removing it, modifying it, changing it, that might break what makes us human. Or it might not. We don't know. And that uncertainty, that fundamental unknowing, that's terrifying. Because the stakes couldn't be higher. We're talking about the future of our species, the trajectory of human evolution, the very definition of what it means to be human. And we're approaching the moment when we have to decide, when we have the power to change ourselves, fundamentally, permanently, irreversibly. So sleep on it, think about it, dream about it. What should humans be? What should we become? And what should we preserve? These aren't easy questions, but they're important ones. Maybe the most important our species has ever faced, because up until now evolution decided. Natural selection decided. Random mutation decided. We just lived with whatever biology gave us, but now we decide. We choose. We design. And that power, that responsibility, it's both thrilling and terrifying. Because we could make ourselves better, or we could break what works, and we won't know which until it's too late. So choose wisely, think carefully, consider deeply. The future of human weakness, the future of human strength, the future of humanity itself, it's in your hands, in your generation's hands, in the choices you make and the values you hold. Will we remain the weak, smart apes, or become the strong, uncertain ones? The answer is coming, and it will define everything that follows. Sleep well, dream of the future, and wake ready to help decide it. Because this enigma, this mystery of human weakness, it's not just history, it's prologue. The story continues, and you're part of it. The part that decides what comes next. Choose wisely. The future is watching. Good night. And one final thought. If you've made it this far, if you're still awake, still listening, still contemplating the strange journey of human weakness, then you understand. You understand that we're not just talking about muscles. We're talking about identity, about what makes us who we are, about the fundamental trade-off that defined our species. We chose brains over brawn, mind over muscle, cooperation over competition. And that choice, made over millions of years by evolutionary pressures we barely understand, that choice made us uniquely human. So when you look in the mirror tomorrow, When you see your weak arms, your soft body, your fragile frame, remember this journey. Remember that every weakness you see is the price we paid for civilization, for language, for art, for science, for everything that makes life worth living. And remember that you have a choice, not about whether to be strong or weak. That choice was made long before you were born, but about how you use what you have. Your weak human body is still capable of remarkable things. Not chimpanzee things, human things. Walking, running, lifting, moving, living. And those capabilities, limited as they are, they're enough. They've always been enough. They'll continue to be enough, as long as you use them, as long as you maintain them, as long as you remember that weakness isn't failure, it's human. And being human is the greatest achievement in the history of life on this planet. So rest now. Your weak body has earned it. Your journey through this story has taken you from chimpanzee strength to human weakness to the very edge of our future. And that journey, that understanding, that's valuable. That's worth having. That's worth remembering. We're weak. We'll always be weak. And that's exactly how it should be. Because our weakness is our strength. Our fragility is our power. Our limitation is our liberation. Never forget that. Never regret that. Never wish to be anything other than what you are. A weak, brilliant, unstoppable human. The enigma is complete. The mystery is solved. The story is told. And the answer is simple. We're weak because being weak made us everything we needed to be. Good night, sweet dreams, and wake tomorrow knowing you're exactly what you're meant to be. Weak, human, perfect.